Of the minority leader.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to address the House for the last time as a member of this esteemed body. It has been the honor of my life to represent the people of the 1st Congressional District of Rhode Island in Congress. At the end of this month, I will be stepping down from this position to become the President and CEO of the Rhode Island Foundation, one of the nation's oldest and largest community foundations. I'm excited to begin this extraordinary opportunity to build upon the work that I've been leading in Congress and to continue to make a meaningful impact on the lives of Rhode Islanders. I would not be standing here today if not for the people of Rhode Island who placed their faith and trust in me to represent them in Congress. Every day over the past 12 years, I put my heart and soul into the work we do here to improve the lives of every Rhode Islander and to protect our great democracy. I want to thank my current and former staff, especially my long-time Chief of Staff, Peter Karafotis, and my District Director, Christopher Bazzacco. I cannot thank you and the rest of our staff enough for all your hard work and dedication over the years. I'm particularly grateful for two people who have worked for me for more than 2 decades, Rita Murphy and Roger Sushite. I've been blessed with the most committed, passionate, and talented staff on the Hill who have established a reputation for our office of excellence and effectiveness. You allowed me to take the lead on many more things than anyone thought possible. Every day you showed up and gave it your all to help the people of Rhode Island, even when your own personal safety was at risk. I am so proud of everything we have accomplished together, and I know that everyone on my staff will go on to do bigger and better things. And to my friends and colleagues, it has been an incredible honor to work with you day in and day out to address the challenges facing our country. It's been a special honor to serve alongside my colleagues in the Rhode Island delegation, Senators Jack Reed and Sheldon Whitehouse, Congressman Jim Langevin and Seth Magaziner. While our delegation may be small, we never let that stop us from delivering big for our state. Your collaboration and friendship have meant the world to me. One of the hardest parts of leaving this job is leaving behind so many dear, dear friends. Hakeem, Joe, Terry, Jamie, Pramila, Robin, Frederica, Bill, Mark, Lucy, Veronica, Maxine, Melanie, Eric, Deborah, Grace, and the list goes on and on. We've been through so much together over the years, and I will always cherish our friendship. I know that we will continue to stay close even after I leave Washington. Let me say a special word about 2 colleagues, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi and Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. I first came to know Speaker Pelosi while serving as mayor of Providence. I will forever remain in awe of her genius and her extraordinary leadership and all the kindness she has shown me over the years. She has been a powerful ally in all of my biggest priorities during my time in Congress. Thank you, Speaker Pelosi, for the honor of serving as an impeachment manager to defend our democracy. And to Rosa DeLauro, you have been my most important mentor, my friend, and my inspiration. You have set a standard for all of us of hard work and deep commitment on every important issue facing our country. At every single moment I have turned to you for advice or support or help of any kind, you have been there. You have been like a sister to me, and our friendship will endure forever. In fact, the only time you've ever been wrong is your claim that New Haven pizza is better than pizza in Providence. I was first elected to Congress in 2010 as one of only 9 new Democrats in the House. We modestly called ourselves the Noble Nine. We were one of the smallest freshman classes ever. The country and Rhode Island were just starting to recover from the Great Recession, and Democrats had lost the majority by 60 seats. Let's just say it wasn't the easiest time to be a freshman Democratic member of Congress. Like most Americans, I was convinced that this place was completely broken, but I was determined to try to change that. I came to Washington with my eyes wide open. I knew there were members of Congress who were only interested in being combative and making headlines, but then I realized there were some members who were interested in working together to get things done for the country. Don't get me wrong, at times it can be incredibly frustrating and even disheartening to work with people who may agree with you on one issue, but completely disagree with you on everything else, including how you live your own life. However, I think it's important for the American people to know that there are a lot of people in Congress who put their country over party and work hard every day to improve the lives of their constituents and all Americans. My first years in Washington, I immersed myself in my committee assignments, the Small Business, Budget, and Foreign Affairs Committee. I focused on trying to bring back American manufacturing jobs and help Rhode Island get back on its feet after the recession. In 2014, I left the Budget Committee and moved over to the House Committee on the Judiciary to try to tackle some of the most pressing issues facing our country, including immigration, gun safety, LGBTQ+ equality, and campaign finance and criminal justice reform. During the committee organizing meeting in 2016, Chairman Nadler convinced me to take the ranking member spot on the House Antitrust Subcommittee, which at the time, to be honest, wasn't exactly the first choice for most committee members. Chairman Nadler gave me great advice. He told me that sometimes you should take an assignment to stretch your mind and learn something new. And I took that to heart. From that moment forward, I learned all I could about antitrust, and I quickly realized just how important antitrust policies were in promoting competition and innovation to protect workers, small business, and our economy by providing consumers with more choices. As ranking member, I developed a great working relationship with Chairman Sensenbrenner. Over dinner, we would discuss our work on the subcommittee and, more importantly, got to know each other better outside the Capitol and without the partisan noise. It showed me that Washington wasn't completely broken and that you could get things done by developing productive working relationships and even friendships with colleagues on the other side of the aisle. In 2016, I was elected by my colleagues to serve in House Democratic leadership as co-chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, which was responsible for developing the long-term messaging for House Democrats. Working alongside now Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and former member Cheri Bustos, we developed the For the People agenda that helped bring Democrats back into the majority in 2018. It was during that time that I developed a real friendship and deep respect for the remarkable talent of Hakeem Jeffries, who I know will be the next Speaker of the House. Even though I was responsible for the Democratic messaging in the House, I stayed committed to finding Republican colleagues that I could work with to get things done for the American people. And that's what I did on some of the biggest issues facing our country, from protecting our democracy to gun safety to LGBTQ+ equality and antitrust reform. I developed strong working relationships and friendships with some of my Republican colleagues, including Ken Buck and Brian Fitzpatrick, as we found common ground on important issues. Even when we didn't see eye to eye on other policies and priorities, I respected their commitment and dedication to public service. As chair of the Antitrust Subcommittee, I expanded on the bipartisan work of Jim Sensenbrenner and I, and started by launching a 16-month bipartisan investigation into the digital marketplace. In partnership with Ranking Member Buck, we examined big tech's anti-competitive practices, documenting them in a 450-page report that informed our bipartisan 6-bill package to rein in big tech and finally modernize our antitrust laws. For decades, our government failed to enforce antitrust laws on the burgeoning tech industry for fear of stifling innovation, which led directly to the problems we see in the industry today. I'm proud that some of our measures became law last Congress, reviving antitrust law and drawing important attention to these issues. I'm especially thankful for the friendship and dedication Ken Buck brought to this effort at great political cost to him. And of course, none of this would have been possible without the extraordinary work of my chief counsel, Slade Bond. While Democrats held the majority, I also tried to end discrimination against LGBTQ+ Americans through the Equality Act. This bipartisan bill, which would end discrimination against LGBTQ+ Americans in employment, housing, credit, education, and public accommodations, is the most extensive civil rights legislation to pass the House since the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It passed out of the House in large part because of the extraordinary leadership of our Speaker, Speaker Pelosi, twice with bipartisan support, and it's only a matter of time before it becomes law, especially with my dear friend Mark Takano now leading the effort. I will be forever grateful also for the early and really critical support of the late John Lewis in this effort. On the Foreign Affairs Committee, I have had the privilege of working with my great chairman, Gregory Meeks, and I've worked with Republicans, including Mike McCall, Joe Wilson, and Ann Wagner, to advance American national security interests abroad and promote diplomacy throughout the world. While some of these colleagues, I established the House Diplomacy Caucus in the wake of attacks on U.S. diplomats in Ukraine following the first impeachment. I also led numerous efforts to promote international human rights. Last Congress, we passed the Global Respect Act. in the House to prevent individuals who commit gross human rights violations against LGBTQ+ people from entering the United States. And in January, President Biden signed the Justice for Victims of War Crimes Act into law, legislation I authored with Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz and with a bipartisan group of senators. On the Judiciary Committee, I was able to continue the work I started on gun violence prevention as mayor of Providence and as a founding member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Following the Pulse nightclub shooting in the summer of 2016, I worked with the late John Lewis, now Minority Whip Catherine Clark, Congresswoman Robin Kelly, and Congressman John Larson to organize the first ever sit-in on the House floor to demand that the Republican majority take action to address gun violence in this country. Over the past 12 years, I've sponsored numerous gun safety bills to ban assault weapons, outlaw ghost guns, close the fire sale loophole, ban bump stocks, prevent people convicting of violent hate crimes from owning a gun, improving the background check system, and to create an active shooter alert system. Once again, I was able to find colleagues on the other side of the aisle to work on some of these bills, including the assault weapons ban and the active shooter alert. Last summer, we passed legislation to reinstate the assault weapons ban with bipartisan votes in the House for the first time in 30 years. Even during the most difficult times, like January 6th, 2 impeachments, and a global pandemic, I've never lost faith in the resiliency and strength of our democracy. It's not always pretty or easy, but we've always come out stronger on the other side because of the powerful heroes of democracy who serve in this place and fight to preserve it every day. I still believe in our democracy and the ability of Congress to tackle big challenges and improve the lives of all Americans. We did that with the American Rescue Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Respect for Marriage Act, and the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. I leave this body knowing that I left it all on the field and did everything I could to keep Americans safe from gun violence, to end legal discrimination against LGBTQ+ Americans, and to shine a bright light on the antitrust issues posed by big tech. Every day I woke up and came to work with the goal of improving the lives of Rhode Islanders and all Americans. That is what has motivated me every day for the last 28 years in public office, and I've done my very best to deliver on that promise. While I may be leaving Congress, I will never stop fighting for what I believe in, and I will always be proud of the work we have done together. I've taken this final opportunity to speak on the floor of this historic institution to highlight some of what we've been able to achieve over the past 12 years when we let understanding, integrity, and the willingness to find common ground take the lead in our work. I come from a state whose motto is hope. And as I leave Congress, I want to leave with this parting word, hope. Hope for our democracy and for this institution. For centuries, the United States has been the hope of the world. We are the nation where freedom, equality, opportunity for all, and unity have made us a beacon of hope in some of the darkest times in human history. For generations, men and women have fought to preserve our way of life, and many have given their blood, sweat, and even their lives for it. Yet today, there are forces working to undermine our democratic institutions and our shared values. This institution has the sacred responsibility to honor the sacrifices made by so many in the work we do every day, in the way we treat one another as colleagues, and in our commitment to let truth, not fear, reason, not extremism, and respect for all, not division, lead our every effort. Our unity as a nation and the ability of our democracy to withstand the test of time depends on the resolve of this institution, those who serve in its halls, and the people whose votes are their voice in this government to keep that hope alive. And so with that, I once again extend my deepest gratitude to the people of Rhode Island for giving me the greatest honor of my life, the opportunity to represent you for the past 12 years here in the Congress of the United States. May God bless you and protect you. May the spirit of hope forever endure in this institution and the people who serve it. And may God bless the United States of America. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the final time in this chamber. I yield to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023, the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner, is recognized as the designee of the Minority Leader for the remainder of the hour.
Thank you. There are a number of members who have come to express their gratitude to Congressman Cicilline, and at this time I yield to the Speaker Emeritus, Speaker Pelosi.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and thank you for bringing us together so that we can pay our respects and gratitude to the great congressman from Rhode Island, your colleague from Rhode Island, David Cicilline. On a personal note, just listening to his comments there, he and Congresswoman DeLauro have a competition about pizza. They don't know that most people come to San Francisco to learn how to make pizza. I say that in sharing our the pride we take in our Italian-American heritage and the knowledge that we have about food. In any event, Mr. Cicilline, thank you for your great leadership in this Congress. You have been a champion on policy issues. You spelled them out there. I'll never forget the day that you joined John Lewis and Catherine Clark and John Larson and others to have a sit-in on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, they did not tell us that they were doing this because as leadership, they would have said, we would have said, you're not allowed to do that. I mean, they could anticipate that I might say that. So they just protected the leadership from that, having to make that statement and launched their sit-in on the floor of the House. It was very successful because by coincidence, we had planned a rally about gun violence prevention, and they were having a sit-in on gun violence prevention on the floor of the House. The whole world found out about it because Mr. Takano spread the word through his telephone, even though the Republicans turned out the lights in the House so nobody could see what was going on here. He spread the word through his telephone, and, well, actually, it became a sit-in heard round the world. Thank you, Mr. Takano. Thank you, John Lewis, darling, and thank you, Mr. Cicilline. But you heard him talk about the issues, the knowledge he has about them, the judgment he has about prioritizing, and the legislative strategic thinking of trying in the most possible way to be bipartisan and to be transparent and to be accountable. Representative is the job title Mr. Cicilline has. It's his title and it's his job description for representing the people of Rhode Island. He loves his district, he loves his state, he loves his country. And that representative coming to the floor and speaking for those people, every time he did so with great pride. So again, he is a man of many issues and many talents. He also has many ethnicities. When I came, I thought, when he came, I thought, oh, good, we have more Italian Americans in the Congress. And I would see him at the Italian American. When I would go to Jewish events, he'd be there as a Jewish member of Congress. And of course, there was the LGBTQ community, so he was a man for all seasons, all ethnicities, all orientations, and that made him a very great representative for our entire country across the board. There are many members here who had time to sing the praises of this great man. I have a million stories I could tell about how in his role as head of our communication, a leader in our communication, DPCC, he made our message more effective, how he gave guidance to members, how he mentored others after they came here. I give him some points for having been the mayor of Providence because when you're mayor, you're a manager. You have to get things done, and he brought that administrative skill to a legislative job, and we all benefited from it. So I thank Mr. Magaziner for yielding some time. I know, as I say, we all have a lot to say about David Cicilline, and we will take other opportunities to do so. But for tonight, not only thank you for your leadership, Mr. Cicilline, for your leadership in this body and the rest, for the beautiful presentation you made about our country this evening, your patriotism, your service, your call to duty, and your being so effective in doing all of the above. Thank you, Mr. Cicilline. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Speaker. At this time, if she would like, I will yield to Ms. DeLauro. Wherever you want.
This really is a bittersweet moment, and I'm so honored to have the opportunity to be here tonight with colleagues, with the Speaker Emerita, to say a few words to honor our colleague, a dear friend, Congressman David Cicilline. He embarks on a new challenge, President and CEO of the Rhode Island Foundation, one of the largest and the oldest community foundations in the nation. But it's just more than pizza, which separates Congressman Cicilline and myself. There really are more Italians in Connecticut than there are in Rhode Island. I know about San Francisco, but it's Connecticut and Rhode Island, and we go back and forth here. Our numbers in Connecticut are larger than your numbers any day of the year. So, and you know, Congress is a wonderful, wonderful, really institution and a place to be, and it really has to do with the people that you serve with. And, you know, you make a lot of acquaintances in the House of Representatives, but you can count your friends probably on one hand, maybe two. And David Cicilline has been my friend. And that's the friendship that occurs in the good times and in the bad times. And those up moments and the down moments when you know that someone always has your back and is there for you no matter what. And David Cicilline has always been there for me no matter what. We had a bond from the moment he arrived in the Congress. I kept saying Cicilline, and he said Cicilline. It was the Italian simpatico, a brother and a sister. My privilege to serve with David since he joined more than a decade ago, 12 years ago. He has distinguished himself as a fighter for Rhode Island, a champion for working middle-class families everywhere. He doesn't shy away from a fight, and he knows how to get things done. A trailblazer for LGBTQ rights, the first openly gay mayor of a major U.S. city, and here in the Congress, a leading voice on human rights, civil rights, marriage equality, gun safety, antitrust, bringing back manufacturing jobs, and so much more, taking on the tech industry. His passion, his commitment to these causes made him one of the most effective legislators in the House. He spoke himself about his fight to prevent gun violence, which is at his core. Founding member of the Bipartisan Coalition, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, led the sit-in on the House floor in 2016 with the iconic John Lewis, Democratic Whip Catherine Clark, my colleague from Connecticut, John Larson. And we did sit in the well here. And the Speaker Emerita was right. We didn't tell the leadership because they would have said no. But we were convinced that we had to do it and to be here. And that was to protest inaction on gun violence. And like John Lewis, he's not afraid to get into good trouble when fighting for what is right. He responded to the ongoing epidemic of gun violence in this country by authoring the assault weapons ban when I was there when people told him not to do it. They said, don't do it. He said, I am going to do it. And that passed in the House last July. Not an easy vote for some, but he knew that it was the right thing to do, and he fought like hell to make it happen. Tireless champion in the fight for justice and equality, fought to enact the Equality Act, the conscience of the House on this issue, led the bipartisan passage for the Respect for Marriage Act, federally recognizing same-sex and interracial marriage, which President Biden signed into law last August. Monumental achievement in advancing civil rights. He's been there next to me. We have fought together on so many issues for women and families. Protecting the right to choose, push for pay equity, passing the Paycheck Fairness Act, passing a child tax credit, passionate and eloquent voice standing up for middle class and working families across the board, and a dedicated ally to do the work and be there with you in the trenches, not afraid to be in the trenches. You know, David Cicilline may be leaving the House of Representatives, but his work continues, his legacy continues. I'm so sad, really, to see him go. I am proud that he will now have an opportunity to build, to expand on so many issues, the work that he did here in the Congress, and further improve the lives of all Rhode Islanders. I know he will continue to be a fearless advocate for the people of Rhode Island and for the causes he believes in and the causes he believes are right. David Cicilline knows why he became a member of the Congress. He understands the power of this institution, its ability to transform people's lives. He didn't come like some these days to dismantle the institution, but to push the edge of that envelope, which could help to make a difference for the people in this country. We will wish you, my brother. What an honor it has been for me to serve with you. And more importantly, what a pleasure it has been for me to call you my friend and my brother. And next time I'm in Providence, and I hope that will be soon, we can get a drink at Clementine's Cocktail Bar and plan some good trouble together. God bless you, my dear and wonderful friend. Without doubt, I will miss you. Thank you, and I would thank Mr. Magaziner for recognizing.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, how much time do we have remaining?
Gentleman has 33 minutes.
Sorry?
33 minutes.
Okay. At this time, I'll yield to Mr. Takano.
Thank you, Mr. Magaziner, for yielding. It is a great honor for me to follow the Speaker Emerita and Ms. DeLauro in offering my words of farewell, my words of wishing that he weren't leaving, to my good friend David Cicilline of Rhode Island. And I thank Mr. Pocan for allowing me to go first. It was very gracious to allow me this honor to be to follow two such great members who felt compelled to come to the floor to make sure that our friend David Cicilline knew how well he is thought of, what regard that we hold him, what esteem we hold him in. I wish I could recount, or I don't really wish, but to recount everything and to touch upon all that David has brought forward into this institution, the ideas that he has carried through his legislation, could really fill up this whole hour. And that would be unfair to the other members who also wish to come and bid him an honorable farewell. But let me focus on just a few things. One, it was a great honor to be on this floor the day after the Pulse nightclub shootings, and to see David, along with the iconic John Lewis and Catherine Clark, take action to not just be frustrated, but to get into some good trouble. And it was my in the moment sort of thinking that this needed to be amplified, this moment needed to be amplified. And so I took out my cell phone and started to stream the events when all the television cameras were turned off, the lights were turned out, and it was an entire night of all of the members of the Democratic caucus expressing their frustration at not doing more than thoughts and prayers. And you know, it happened that the Pulse nightclub shootings touched the LGBTQ community, which David and I are members of. And I watched with great admiration at how David made sure to work with the Congressional Black Caucus to touch that sacred 1964 Civil Rights Act, and to work with them to craft a bill that would add the words gender identity and sexual orientation to that sacred document which protects so many classes of people in America and in the United States, and for which we still need to accomplish this act. And David, I am honored and touched that you will entrust the Equality Act in my hands to get it across the line, and you can be sure that you will be on the invitation list in the front row when the President of the United States signs that bill into law. And let me say, as a final sort of reflection, former Speaker Pelosi has always talked about this being the greatest intellectual resource. The members, that is, the members of this Congress are a huge intellectual resource. Let me say that no more is that exemplified than in the hearings that David Cicilline held on antitrust. Antitrust is a complicated, dense topic. He spent months, actually years, pouring through the academic research and the views of law professors to understand antitrust law in our country. And he brought forward as witnesses, the heads of Facebook and Google, and contended with great economic forces in our country. But, all in the service of making sure that average Americans have a chance at privacy, have a chance for competition, and that not all the resources will get sucked up, and not all of the advantages are held by big corporate entities. That intellectual resource, that groundwork that he laid, I'm confident is going to work itself through this Congress because both sides care, both Democrats and Republicans care about this issue. And it was overshadowed by a much more attention-grabbing figure. And it was frustrating to me that more of America, more of the media could not pay attention to the important work that David Cicilline was doing. Mr. Speaker, I could go on for a lot longer, but that would be unfair to all the others here who want to pay their respects to a tremendous member of Congress of consequence. And so I yield back my time, and in one farewell, I wanted to say, David, thank you for your service, and I'll miss you in this body.
Thank you. At this time, I yield to Mr. Neguse.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, it is a great privilege to be able to be here today to salute my friend, a fine man, a good man, and someone who has served our country so admirably over the course of these last 12 years in David Cicilline. There's a quote from President John Adams that I want to share, our second president, who once said, "I fear that in every assembly, members will obtain an influence by noise, not sense, by meanness and not greatness, by ignorance, not learning, and by contracted hearts and not large souls." There are many places in our country in which his fears ring true today. But one of the places where it does not is in Rhode Island, where for the better part of the last decade, the people of Rhode Island could rest easy, knowing they had elected a leader who would serve them admirably, a leader whose common sense was on full display as a member of the House leadership team. I can remember very early in my tenure in Congress 5 years ago, learning from and being mentored by David Cicilline as he chaired the House Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, always willing to help a new member navigate the experience of serving in Congress. His greatness was on full display during the course of the investigation that he led as chairman of the Antitrust Subcommittee. As his vice chair during that subcommittee investigation, I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, firsthand just how hard he worked, day in, day out, the entrenched interests and the concentrated power that he fought against day after day to ensure that that investigation would be done and that ultimately the American public would benefit from it. And of course, his learning was on full display during the course of both presidential impeachments over the course of the last 4 years, but in particular during the second impeachment, when Mr. Cicilline and I stood together on the floor of the United States Senate, when his fidelity to the Constitution and his role in defending our democracy was on full display to millions of Americans. He has been an effective representative for the people of Rhode Island. He has been a tireless leader here in the United States Congress. He's done his country and his state a great service, and he's been a dear friend, a dear, dear friend to so many of us in the Congress. In the last 5 years, I've been here on the floor for quite a few departing speeches from members, people I considered friends. I have yet to come to one in which the chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee, the chairman of the Veteran Affairs Committee, the chairman of the Equality Caucus, the Speaker of the House, the former chairman of our caucus have all gathered, except for today. And it's a reflection of just how special David Cicilline is, the reach and breadth of the support and friendships that he developed within the House Democratic Caucus, which I believe will last long after he's left this hallowed chamber. So to David, to Mr. Cicilline, the gentleman from Rhode Island, we say thank you for your service to our country. We will miss you. We look forward to seeing you again. I yield back.
Thank you. At this time, I yield to Mr. Pocan.
I'd like to thank the gentleman from Rhode Island, and I'd like to thank David Cicilline for his great work in Congress. He has been an LGBTQ plus leader. He has been a progressive champion. He has been a Judiciary Committee leader, and he's been a mentor to many of us in Congress, including myself. And I'm going to really miss having him and his wisdom in Congress. I think a lot of people are going to miss him across the country. If you care about gun violence, you're going to miss David Cicilline. He was the author of the assault weapon ban, so important as we have shooting after shooting after shooting with an AR-15. His bill would help address that in this country. But it's not just that, it's also he has gone above and beyond. Every time in this chamber, when there's a moment of silence and no moment of action around gun violence, it's so disheartening for everyone around the country. But that day that's been talked about, when he was one of the organizers, sitting down and taking over this chamber to have a moment of action, is one of the few times, in fact, the only time, that I saw that in my 10.5 years in Congress. If you care about progressive values, you're going to miss David Cicilline. He was a progressive caucus leader, and as chair of the DPCC, he led on our values and articulating values for Democrats, and he did an amazing job in doing that. If you care about democracy, you're going to miss David Cicilline. Being an impeachment manager is a huge undertaking. And you had, trust me, all kinds of people around the country who disagree with you saying all sorts of interesting things. David did an amazing job in standing up for this country and for everyone who cares about our democracy in that role. If you care about consumer issues, you're going to miss David Cicilline. As that chair of that subcommittee on the Judiciary Committee dealing with antitrust and tech issues, he was fighting on behalf of consumers so that we could have more affordable costs of goods so that you didn't just have a few monopolies running everything. And if you care about equality and LGBTQI plus rights, I guarantee you're going to miss David Cicilline. He was the chair of our Equality Caucus for a very long time, and he was the lead author of the Equality Bill. But most importantly, David has been a role model for LGBTQ youth across the country. It's not easy still, even in 2023, to be out and gay, especially in this body with people who still are attacking trans kids. As a last gasp against equality, David has been our leader and our senior member of the Equality Caucus, and we so respect all the work that he's done. So I'm going to miss his positive leadership style. I'm going to miss his common sense vision, but most importantly, I'm going to miss his friendship. David Cicilline has, again, as I said, been a great mentor to many of us. We know he's going to do great back in Rhode Island, and I too am going to get to Clementine's. So I yield back.
Thank you. At this time, I yield to Mr. Larson.
Thank you. I'm honored to join my colleagues, and I was fortunate to hear the Deaness of our delegation speak earlier, and I'm not very good at farewells or goodbyes. I'm far better at hellos. David, we could never say goodbye to such an engaging and compassionate and caring individual, reflected in the legislation that you have put forward, reflected in the way that you have represented the people of Rhode Island, how you engage yourself on this floor with individual members, what you have done time and again, leading with your heart, but using that great brain power and strategy to get things done on behalf of people. I know it's been mentioned about our beloved colleague, John Lewis, and staging that sit-in here on the floor. But I believe that that's something that everyone who was serving here at the time will never forget. And again, it was your leadership. It was your compassion, your heart. You're a man amongst men who demonstrates that daily. I love and respect you. I will miss you, but not for long, because we'll always be together. And by now, I think just about the whole Congress is headed to Rhode Island for a drink at Clem's. So thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much for your commitment to the people of Rhode Island. The country is better off because David Cicilline has served and represented the people of Rhode Island here in the People's Chamber.
Yield back. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on the topic of this legislative order.
Without objection.
Thank you. And I rise today to celebrate the distinguished congressional career of one of Rhode Island's finest public servants and my good friend, Congressman David Cicilline, who will be retiring from the House this week. A born and raised Rhode Islander from a proud Italian and Jewish family, David served as a state representative before making history, being elected the first openly gay American to be mayor of a major city. In his 2 terms as mayor of Providence, David restored ethics and vitality to City Hall and was elected to represent the 1st Congressional District in 2010. For over a decade, David has served the people of Rhode Island with honor, courage, and decency in the House of Representatives. Through his work in the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Cicilline has become a nationally recognized leader in the fights to prevent gun violence and enforce antitrust laws to protect working Americans. As chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus, David has helped lead the charge for LGBTQ+ rights. David also served ably on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, chairing the Africa and Middle East Subcommittee in the last Congress, and served multiple leadership roles in the House Democratic Caucus. And our nation will always be indebted to David Cicilline for his role in holding former President Trump accountable for inciting the deadly assault on the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. David co-wrote the articles of impeachment while the attack was still in progress, and ably served as a House impeachment manager. I know I speak for many of my colleagues when I say how much I will miss David's energy and intellect in the House. But David's lifetime of service is not yet complete. And come June, he will be taking on his new role as president and CEO of the Rhode Island Foundation, one of the nation's foremost community foundations. I look forward to working with you, David, in your new role. And I join all of Rhode Island in thanking you for your many years of dedicated public service to our state. Thank you very much. I now I yield back the balance of my time, and...
Does the gentleman have a motion?
No. Yeah. and I move that the House now do adjourn.
The question is the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. This decision, the chair of the ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned.